Hello, John Najarian here. If you want to trade like a rebel, if you want to party like a rebel, well, you got to come to Rebelcon 2022. It's going to be in Dallas, Texas, at the fabulous Four Seasons Resort. We start the 21st of September, go until September 24th. It will be more fun and more live trading than we've ever done before. That's why it's called Rebelcon 2022. We're going to have barbecues and double the amount of live trading. So if you want to book that now, make sure you do, because the guest speakers, as soon as we announce those, this thing's going to be sold out. It's going to be something you do not want to miss. Limited to 250 people. Diamond, platinum, and gold packages are selling out. Sign up now for Rebelcon 2022 at the Four Seasons in Dallas, Texas.
Welcome to the Rebellion.
Good morning, I'm Pete Najarian. This is the Take for Market Rebellion on this very, very harsh selling that we've had for the last, call it, almost 48 hours. And it has been brutal. Yesterday started off a little bit quiet, but then it started to accelerate. And by the time we got into the final 2 hours, we really started to accelerate to the downside. We actually were about 33,000 yesterday near those highs. And we're about 1,500 points today lower than we were yesterday at those highs. But yesterday we did finish down a little over 2% on that drop, about 630 points. Pretty significant. It was a mirror image when you take a look over at the NASDAQ. Final 2 hours, accelerated to downside, and finished the day down about 330 points for the NASDAQ. So what was really getting hit? Just about everything you can imagine. Crude oil just kind of hanging around. Call it 121 to 122, sort of in a range yesterday. But you take a look over and you want to see what was really pushing the markets. Take your pick. Every single sector was in the red. It was technology down about 2.5, a little bit more than 2.5%. Apple, Amazon, Netflix. Netflix we'll be talking about today as well on a Goldman downgrade, which is not treating that stock very well, or me, an owner of that stock, very well at all. Financials down about 2.5%, a little bit more than that. It was Goldman Sachs, Citi, Bank of America, Wells Fargo. Go through the list. They were all getting hammered to the downside. Materials yesterday, Freeport Mac, one of those names that was pulling things to the downside, along with U.S. Steel, along with Cleveland Cliffs, and energy. That was even down yesterday. Even though the crude wasn't moving, energy was under some pretty significant pressure, well over a 2% drop. It was a lot of those beta names. Now, we talk about that all the time. I brought that up the other day on television, both at the halftime report and the 5 o'clock show, which, by the way, I'm going to be duplicating. It's going to be a double-double today for me. Noon show and the 5 show today. So before we get too far along, though, it was APA, EOG getting hit, Occidental, Pioneer, all getting just kind of hammered yesterday to the downside. And when you look to staples and everybody's like, well, you got to find a safe spot. We have learned, and hopefully everybody has learned, I don't know that there is such a thing as a safe spot any longer in these markets. I think that when you really look around, is the safe spot the spot where you've got higher PEs than we've ever seen before, blah, 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 all of that goes into the thinking. But it is sort of interesting to watch how this all plays out. Staples were not as bad, down about 1.5% yesterday. It was Coke, it was Pepsi. You go through Procter & Gamble, those kind of names. But the volatility, we started to creep up a little bit yesterday, right around 26. Volumes crept up a little bit, but still pathetic. About 36 million contracts yesterday. Amazon still the number one spot, 1.6 million. You had Apple, 1.4 million. You also had Tesla, actually Tesla 1.4 million, Apple about 1 million contracts. So nearly 10% in those three stocks. So a lot of, a little bit different than we've seen in the past where it's a little bit more broadly spread. So something just to keep in the back of your mind. You got nat gas approaching 9. That's something. The 10-year, and now let's remember this. We've been talking about this for a long time, guys. When you look at the 10-year, when the 10-year gets much above or above 3, that's where you start to see the selling. We get below 3, you start to see the buying. The other day, people were trying to say, well, it's the price of crude. I really don't believe that. We've seen crude prices rising, and we've seen markets actually rising with that, all the rest of that. It has been the 10-year, in my opinion. My friends and a lot of the guys that I speak with on a daily basis, hourly basis, we've been talking about this for a while now. It hasn't broken yet, and it's been very, very consistent. And I'll give you a few examples about that today as well. But before we get into that, when we were looking yesterday, what was kind of pressuring in that final couple of hours? Concerns about the CPI. They were probably right to be concerned about that CPI because, unfortunately, those numbers were not very pretty. We did have some bright spots yesterday. NXPI, names like Dollar General. We had Tractor Supply, Home Depot, Costco, Starbucks, a few names, but generally everything was just getting pushed to the downside yesterday, really getting hammered. Even those Chinese names, and we've talked about that, 2 steps up, 1 step back. Chinese names are actually making a pretty nice move today, despite the fact that yesterday they were getting pushed pretty hard to the downside. It was also names like Boeing and Disney and Nike that were getting hammered a little bit. So we go into today looking for that number, and everybody wants to know, hey, the consumer price index, what do we think? What do we think? I can tell you that you could tell by the reaction yesterday that people were very nervous, and going into it, they were nervous for all the right reasons. It did accelerate from April. It did come in and as a really hot number, hottest number in over 40 years. So that does say quite a bit. We were down about 350 early on. Not terrible, but a pretty good smack to the downside. We have continued to react and sell. We've been down as much as 800 points on the Dow. I don't think we're quite that low just this second, but I've obviously started with this. But I would also say NASDAQ, lockstep right there with it. NASDAQ was down about 190. Last I looked, it was pushing a lot closer to being down about 400 points, about a 3% drop there. So we are seeing significant selling, no doubt about it. Crude, basically unchanged again. Not a whole lot going there. Oh, but take a look at the 10-year. Actually hit about a 3.1 today. So accelerating again, a little bit of a push to the upside. That means they're selling stocks. It's exactly what we're seeing. Nat gas getting a lot closer to 9. Bitcoin dropping under 30,000. You get the idea. Technology getting absolutely slapped today, down about 3.5%. The timing for Kathy Wood and those has gotten a little bit more brutal, it feels like, each and every time that we hear about them buying more. Materials, they were down about 2.5%. That accelerated down about 3%. Consumer discretionary absolutely getting hit in the backside, down about 4%. That's huge. Financials down over 3%. I've got industrials pushing 3% to the downside. Energy actually did improve a little bit, but still, every single sector's red. Energy, one of the better performers, down about a little over 1% right now. Also, earnings continue to run through things, and we obviously have less focus every single day. But going into today, even though the markets were already bad, you look at something like DocuSign, absolutely getting crushed. Stitch Fix as well, getting smacked to the downside. I mentioned Netflix earlier. That's one of the names that's on the naughty list because Goldman Sachs they dropped that price target, gave them a downgrade to a sell, and that stock under some amazing pressure as well right now. The Chinese names, as I mentioned, got a little bit of something to them today. You look at NetEase and PDD and Baidu and JD, all in positive territory. And let me tell you, it's hard to find much green on the screens today. So the fact that all of those names are green really does make a statement. We also have agricultural with CF and Mosaic really giving a little bit of a boost to the upside, something anyway. Adobe getting smacked around. I mentioned Netflix, Microsoft, you've got Salesforce, you've got Boeing. This is very, very broad selling. NVIDIA, I already mentioned DocuSign. How about Datadog? All of those getting hammered to the downside. I got 2 unusuals, and then I've got a double-double today with the noon show and the 5 show at CNBC. So look forward to seeing you at the noon show. We got a great lineup, but I'm not supposed to probably say who's all on, so I'm going to hold off on that. You're going to want to watch. One of my favorite professors is going to be on there today. This guy's awesome. Now, Spider, 393 is where it was trading, the SPY. 30,000 of the July 377 puts were being bought today. And as they were being bought, they're paying somewhere between 650 and 670 for those puts. So looking at even more downside, or is it protection? Always difficult to tell, but it feels a little bit more like this is somebody trying to play a little bit of this momentum. By the way, I didn't mention the volatility for today, but the volatility today, last I looked, fast approaching not only 29, but not that terribly far away from 30. We were in about a 26 to a little over 29 range. It's going to be interesting to see how that volatility shakes out, especially the fact that it's Friday, got to price in the weekend. We'll see how all that happens. That's in the last part of the day, last hour and a half or so. That's when we'll really see the reaction of trading ahead and looking ahead and trying to see where that volatility is going to be. So as I mentioned, 30,000 of those puts being bought in the Spider. There is a little bit bullishness out there, and actually the stock started to make a little bit of a turn. Colgate-Palmolive. Now this one's down a little bit. I'm just looking at the 52-week range. It's on a little bit of closer towards the lower side. 75.50 is where the stock was trading. We had a buyer of 4,600 of the July 77.5 calls. So buying a little bit of time, that's a nice thing. Got a little bit of upside, another nice thing. They're going to go for about $1.30 to $1.50, but as I say, 4,600 of those, it's something that's positive on the day on a name that actually looks much better today than a lot of those names within any space that you want to look, because there is not a whole lot of green on those screens. Folks, have a great day of trading. Have a very safe day. Be smart. Be disciplined. Have a great weekend.